to this new video for my channel, The Mental Traveler. I'm Caro Herrera and today I'm going to be reviewing a book called The Silmarillion. It was written by J.R.R. Tolkien and it was published 4 years after the author's death. And even though The Silmarillion came decades after the publication of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, this is a book that Tolkien actually spent his whole life writing. He began envisioning it during World War I, and it wasn't until the 30s that he came up with The Hobbit. So in a way this could be considered the work closest to his heart. And in fact he began writing it as an attempt to give England a mythology, because he noticed that while other European cultures had their own myths, Britain lacked an explanation of its origins and culture. I mean, it does have legends like King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, but even that was taken from a French myth, I think. Anyways, before I begin, let me just say that this will be a video with spoilers. So if you haven't read The Silmarillion, beware. I've been a fan of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit since I was a girl, and when I was in my teens, I went on this shopping spree to get as many books of Tolkien written set in Middle-earth as I could get my hands on. One of them was The Silmarillion, but when I was a teenager, I don't think I was quite ready to read it. It took me years to get past the first 5 pages. I just picked it up and felt it was like the Bible for Middle-earth, and the writing style seems so different from Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit to me. I knew I would read it one day, but I thought I had to be sufficiently of an adult for me to really comprehend what it meant. So yeah, a decade after, I finally read The Silmarillion, and this was because at the start of 2018 I moved to Canada for a while, and while I was there I went to this class that analyzed the works of Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, and the particular class I attended was about The Silmarillion. Now, my best friend since childhood, she's a big Tolkien fan as well, and she was taking this class and she just loved it, and she was telling me why she liked it so much, who was her favorite character, what she was learning in that class as well. So I was kind of intrigued about The Silmarillion, and then one day I didn't really know what should I read, and I saw The Silmarillion on my bookshelf here. So I decided to watch a 3-minute video on YouTube that explained what The Silmarillion was all about, just so that I could land on something concrete. And I don't mind spoilers, it was okay that I would know what was happening. And thus I decided to give it a try, and luckily enough, since the first sentences, it was as if I was suddenly a different person, because I was understanding what Tolkien meant. I wasn't finding the writing style difficult at all. And while I may not be getting at first who every character was, I ended up reading The Silmarillion in 2 days because I completely fell in love with it. The events that we see in The Hobbit and in The Lord of the Rings take place during the last years of the Third Age of Middle-earth. And so The Silmarillion serves as a predecessor, seeing as it covers from the creation of this world to the ending of the Return of the King. Why it's so wide in scope, covering 3 long ages. Its writing style is indeed different to that of Tolkien's first published work, having a more formal narrative, and it reads as an epic history text, rather than a novel full of conversations between characters. In fact, I think Tolkien wrote it in a way that makes it appear that supposedly Bilbo Baggins was the one who translated it from Elvish, so that newer generations would not forget what came before them. And while the writing style is beautiful, from personal experience I get why it may not be everyone's cup of tea. I could go on and tell you a brief summary of everything that happens in The Silmarillion, from the creation of Middle-earth, which originally was called Arda, to all the wrongdoings of Melkor, the first Dark Lord of the predecessor of Sauron, to what the famous stories of Beren, Luthien, the children of Húrin, and the fall of Gondolin are about, just to name a few. But that would probably make this video about an hour long, so instead I'm just going to focus on reviewing it. But if you want to get a good idea of what it is about, in 3 minutes I'm going to be posting a link to that YouTube video I mentioned earlier that I watched. So I'll just wrap up this section by saying that it was amazing to read the 3 ages of Middle-earth as a whole, seeing how the beginning connects characters I know so well, for example, characters like Elrond, Galadriel, and Gandalf, Frodo, and Aragorn. I give The Silmarillion a 5 out of 5 stars review and highly recommend it to any Tolkien fan to read at least once in their lives, because it's just wonderful to know, after years and years of reading and watching The Lord of the Rings, who they are referring to when the characters mention Gil-galad and Erendil, for example. There was just so much that I enjoyed from The Silmarillion, and I can't think of anything negative to say about it. I only wish that it was longer, and maybe I would have liked to have more conversations between the characters, but in the end it's just perfect as it is, really. And Tolkien wanted it written in that particular way for a reason, so I am not complaining. And while I may be new to The Silmarillion, I can completely appreciate its beauty and its worth. I'd respected Tolkien for ages for his world building, but this just blew my mind away. And it's so easy to believe that this was his life's work because of its vast scope. He spent from 1914 to the 70s living inside this world, inside his mind, And it's so cool that we can now enter it and marvel along with him. And while the author may have been inspired to write certain parts from other stories that he had read, in the end the final product leaves me in awe. I used to think before, as an aspiring writer, that it was so cool how Tolkien doesn't really put any emphasis on religion when writing Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and yet he manages to present this very believable world building. But I was very pleasantly surprised to find a more spiritual approach in the Silmarillion. It took my breath away while I was wrapping my mind around this book. So cool as a lifelong Tolkien fan to know finally how the Ents came about, the orcs and all the races in Middle-earth, how they were created. Now I know who the Dunedain were and that they were not all good. And we even discovered the kingdom of Númenor, and I finally learned the history of Gondor. I feel like I understand why Beren and Lúthien, the children of Húrin, and the fall of Gondolin have been expanded into separate stories. And I'm so excited now the whole Moria incident from the Fellowship of the Ring has a deeper meaning. I fully get what Gandalf means when he declares the company have no chance against a Balrog of Morgoth, because they were alive during the times of the early ages of Middle-earth. Another point that I would like to make is that, however awesome I found the Ainur, I think my favorite parts were those dealing with the elves. Before, I used to think of them as these ethereal beings who are in the dusk of their prime, because my only reference to them were from the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. But now, rather than only have these ideas of the elves being wise and ancient like Elrond and Galadriel, for example, I know that there are many other memorable elves who were selfish and very appealing literature creations. Characters like Fëanor, Maeglin, Turgon and Thingol. And now I find them such a complex and amazing race. They were full of flaws and yet they were perfect in a way. They have a lot of similarities with men and yet they are so different. Another really cool thing about the Silmarillion is that it covers up until the ending of The Return of the King. Learned of new material from stuff I already knew. For example, how Orthanc was created. And some of the stuff that we saw Gandalf doing in the Hobbit movies, here it is expanded. Personally, I'm happy that we watched that in that trilogy. Amazon is going to be making a prequel series to Lord of the Rings. And while there are rumors that it's gonna focus on Aragorn's origins, I think it would be way more epic if they based it on the Silmarillion. There's just so many material there, but it would have to be an adaptation that really respects Tolkien's world. I don't want to see, for example, any sex in it, even though that sells. That's not what Middle-earth is about. That's for other shows. Anyways, for the moment, I believe this is all I have to say about the Silmarillion. Thank you very much for watching my review of it. I'm keeping my fingers crossed you enjoyed it. In the description box below, you can find a link to the book's Goodreads page. Please let me know if you liked the video or not, and I would love to talk about the Silmarillion or anything Tolkien related with you. Before I go, I want to say that the Mental Traveler is on Instagram, so it would be really cool, and I'd be so grateful if you follow me there. Oh, and also, in the description box below, you can find a link to that 3-minute video describing what the Silmarillion is all about. But yeah, anyways, I'm Caro Herrera, the Mental Traveler, and I hope you have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. I'll be seeing you soon. Take care. Goodbye.